So is there a connection? Well, there obviously is. What exactly is the connection between neoconservative politics, the desire to regime change foreign powers despite the total lack of benefit to the United States, and the desire to radically change the demographic mix of the United States, and the desire to, I don't know, lend money at high interest or let any of the festering social problems in this country go unaddressed? What is the connection? You really have to serve in the Congress to know. And Marjorie Taylor Greene did for 5 years from Georgia. Whether you agree with her or not, you'd have to say one of the most sincere people ever to serve in the Congress. So sincere that when she found out that all...
Avec de nouveaux partenariats, de nouveaux emplois, et en soutenant la sécurité et la prospérité économique du pays, Hanoï s'engage à contribuer à un Canada plus fort.
This game, you're not ready for it.
All of it was fake, she left. We thought it'd be worth asking her, what is going on here? Ladies and gentlemen, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Congressman, thanks a lot for joining us. So you pretty recently served in the U.S. House, so maybe you can answer this question. Why is it that so many of the members of Congress who support this war, who supported the Iraq war, who support every pointless, counterproductive foreign entanglement, are also the very same people who were trying to force Americans to take the COVID shot, who voted to put spyware in people's cars, who are for the castration of children, who ignore the opioid crisis, and who are for mass migration? Why would neocon politics bring you to a place where you support all of these other things that are not connected to foreign policy, but that are also bad for the population of this country? Like, what's the connector?
Well, the obvious first response, any person with common sense would say, I have no idea why they would ever do that, right?
Fair.
And then secondly, I think the question is, why do Americans keep voting for these people?
Yeah, so that just makes me question, right? Like, what does she mean by why do Americans keep voting for these people? I believe Americans voted for DJT because he supposedly wasn't supposed to be like these people, right? But then turns out that they might have been mistaken. Well, we'll keep playing the clip here. Just curiouser and curiouser.
And yes. I think the responsibility falls on the voters to get rid of them. But I'll tell you why they keep voting for those things, Tucker. Having served in Congress for 5 years, what I learned from the inside is there are very powerful industries and they're very powerful lobbyists, and the financial donations and structures that are built behind them is what entangles these politicians into supporting things that are unimaginable, things that Americans do not vote for. Like you said, gender affirming care, transing children, requiring cars to have AI, big tech technology in them where they won't start if the AI deems that you're not capable of driving. The list goes on and on. Voting for FISA 702 without warrants, warrantless spying on Americans. That's actually happening. I think they're having a vote right now on the House floor on the rule to move forward to do that.
So did she just say Pfizer? Because was it not their man, DJT, who was like the Operation Warp Speed guy? Honestly, that's when I started to question DJT was since the Warp Speed. But yeah, that's just me though.
You can't answer. It doesn't make sense why they support these things, but I can tell you that it has a lot to do with the power structure in Washington, D.C., and it supports both Republicans and Democrats.
Because I think it's such a good point to make, because it's not ideological, at least in a way that people my age can understand. There's nothing conservative about allowing the government to spy on you. There's nothing liberal about it in a traditional sense either. These are not liberal, conservative, left, right, even Republican, Democrat divides. It's almost like there's a group that's for authoritarian policies that hurt Americans. And that's kind of what connects all of these positions.
This is really interesting, right? Because it sounds like, I wonder what group he's talking about. Because the current group that we have right now, it sounds like that group seems to be, at least some would argue that it's a little bit authoritarian, right? They seem to be doing things as they please, and they seem to be highly volatile. That's what it looks like, and that is what a lot of people are saying. But feel free to agree or disagree in the chat, guys. But what group is she talking about exactly?
No, absolutely. They're bought and paid for. They do not represent the American people or the American people's interest. And it's because they're funded that way. Take, for example, oh my gosh, this was shocking to me. Just last week, right? 57 Republicans voted no on an amendment to stop the government from controlling your car. Like that, what we're talking about, the AI capability. This was something that Biden and the Democrats, they passed a law when I was serving in Congress. Of course, I voted no to it. And the law is to require every new car starting in 2027 to have technology in there to be able to basically scan you and determine if you're drunk, if you're capable, if you're healthy and fit and capable of driving your automobile. And the car
producers,
yeah, but you know what though? Like, is that so bad? Now I can see, like, in an ideal world, this wouldn't be so bad, right? But knowing the way like our leaders are, like, I would be very cautious with giving them that much control and power over my life.
Again, helps you finish your tracks way faster. Check this out. I'm going to start with this loop that I made here.
Will not start if AI determines that you're not. Now, 57 Republicans voted no on an amendment to stop that from happening. And I was shocked. It's your usuals, Mike Lawler, Don Bacon, Randy Fine. But I was really surprised to see a name on the list, a recently elected Republican, Brian Jack from Georgia, who campaigned as being a conservative. I know his district really well. It was just to the south of my old district. These people don't support that, but yet his name was on there. And the question is, how did he fall into that trap? And why in the world would he vote no on an amendment to stop the government from basically controlling your vehicle? But this is
you know what? You know why? Could it be because like they're all like just on the same side and then giving us the idea that we have different sides? Could it be that they're all in bed together? Because actually a lot of these Congress people, they are all very, very wealthy, right? So could it be that it's just wealthy people making calls about what happens in our day-to-day lives and then putting up theater in Congress to make it look like, oh, we're defending your rights, but then meanwhile, at the end of the day, like, it's just business as usual. Could it be? I'm just asking. I'm not making any statements here. I'm just questioning the narrative and wanting to have a dialogue about it in the chat. So do let me know, guys, what you think about it.
Get pulled in, and it all happens through fundraising. And it's the most unreal thing I've ever seen in my life.
So back to that, and the only thing I would quibble with in your description is the term "your vehicle." If the government can turn it off, it's not your vehicle anymore.
That's right.
They just took your vehicle from you. It's not yours. You don't have control over it, despite the fact you pay for it and keep up with the insurance and the maintenance.
So, but could we also say the same thing is similar with your home? Do you ever really own your home? Because if you stop paying your property taxes, right, and they could take your home. So that would be like, you're not following the rules, so we're going to take your home. Or you're driving impaired, we're going to take your car. So do we really own anything with that logic? I don't know. Like, maybe am I tripping here? Like, let me know, guys. Like, am I completely off the mark here? Because I feel like with that logic, then it's, Anyways, we'll keep going here.
But to this question of the member from your delegation, the Georgia delegation, who just got elected as a, quote, conservative, presumably for civil liberties and freedom and the Constitution, like, how specifically do you think someone like that could wind up casting a vote this obviously authoritarian, this obviously in contradiction to his own stated values? Like, what was the process that got him there, do you imagine?
Climbing the leadership.
I am so sorry, guys, to keep pausing the video, but why are they passing votes on EVs? Like, we have like a ongoing blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. Why are we talking about EVs? Like, why don't they pass, like, why don't they talk about that? And why don't they try and put an end to that war that seems to be, didn't even get congressional approval? Why aren't they talking about that? I wonder if they'll get to that in this podcast here. I'll keep going. Hopefully they do cover that, because you would think that that is a pressing issue, right? Or do they not prioritize items in Congress? Maybe I don't know how they do it there, right? So y'all feel free to educate me down in the chat.
Latter, wanting to basically be the chairman of the NRCC, wanting to be fully integrated and in charge of all fundraising for the House GOP. That's probably what pulled him in. Brian Jack, who I actually campaigned for, I endorsed him because I believed he would be America first. So I was really shocked to see his name on this list. Actually really disgusted with it. I'm very unhappy that his name is on this list. Makes me regret endorsing him.
I bet.
Yeah, for sure. But his history is he was on the political side for the president in the first administration, which means he worked with all the candidates and all the donors. Then he was he worked on the political operation for former Speaker Kevin McCarthy when he was the minority leader and then became Speaker of the House. So he's very donor-driven, big donor-driven, Washington, D.C. donors that require government contracts, donors that are going to basically keep the big industries propped up and going. And so that's what would pull a Republican that campaigned on being America first, campaigned on being MAGA, campaigned on, being a conservative.
Whoa.
So that just sounds very similar to Trump, right? When they say someone that campaigned as being MAGA. Like, Trump literally invented MAGA, campaigned on that, and then just went ahead and did the complete opposite. He's like the most non-MAGA guy, you would wonder. He's more like a MIGA. And I said MIGA, okay? So don't get me wrong. I didn't say the N-word. Now we got James left 2 chats. He said, both Tucker and MTG have been close enough to Trump for long enough to recognize that the Trump, and he puts that in quotes, we see today is not the same man. Literally, Dito Bongino, I guess that's Dan Bongino, Dito Patel, and the Greene. Eyed short imposter in the White House needs to have a DNA test stat. My brother, like, who's the short imposter? Are you talking about Ben Shapiro? I don't know. Could he be talking about Ben Shapiro? Because some people have been saying that is actually who's secretly behind the wheels. But let me know, James. Is that what you're talking about here? Are you talking about Ben Shapiro?
App in base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
It's the donor-driven money that happens behind the scenes that pulls a Republican over to that side. And when I say Republican-driven, it's power. It's sheer power. In Washington, D.C., a member of Congress can fully fill their campaign coffers with just a few fundraisers in Washington, D.C., where you have the industry giants there, say whether it's the military-industrial complex, the base there, those companies, whether it's pharmaceutical companies, big tech companies, you name it, any industry.
Yeah, and I love that she's talking about this, right? Because just yesterday I did a video about Ilhan Omar, and everyone is like calling for her head pretty much, right? And then I had mentioned that obviously she's not the only one that is doing this. So I love that MTG is actually acknowledging this. Good on her.
That is trying to get this candidate to support the things that they desperately need to empower them, empower their companies, help their companies become richer and richer and richer and dominate in their industry. These executives will show up with their wives, and they'll have 10 to 20, maybe 30 of them there. And they're writing max checks on behalf of themselves, max checks on behalf of their wives. And they will be there supporting this Republican member of Congress that needs to get reelected, and they can make hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, you know what, James? I must apologize. So I'm sorry, James. So James actually was talking about Trump. He called Trump I guess that's the eyed short imposter. So you're saying Trump's eyes are closed. So are you calling him like, are you saying that like maybe that's not the real DJT? Could the real DJT please stand up? Again, could the real DJT please stand up? I think that's the real DJT. I really think that like he's just doing what he's been told to do. I really believe that. I think he has a job and that's what he's there to execute. And that there's just not much more about it. But this is just my own opinion, James. Let me know if you disagree or agree in the chat.
Up to $1 million like that on just a few of those fundraisers. And so these Republicans that are flying back and forth to Washington, D.C. every week, they're away from their family, they're away from their friends, they're away from the people that elected them, which makes them forget what's important. They get really lazy, and it gets easy to just have a couple of fundraisers where you're getting drunk on cocktails and eating little weenies on a stick or whatever they're serving up there in the Capitol Hill Club. And this is how they'll make all that money. And it's a lot easier than having to go back to your district, face your district, have personal meetings with.
Okay, so why are they calling it districts now? Almost like as if we're in the Hunger Games. And I like that she's talking about like their ballroom parties, right? Because that just goes to show you where the priorities are. Like they're having like cocktail and eating meat off of sticks. Meanwhile, getting paid like $170K just to argue with each other. Right, but then they all probably party together, right? Oh, I don't know. Like, question for you guys, whenever they have these ballroom events, do they invite Democrats and Republicans? Or is it just because now they have a Republican president and only Republicans are invited? I don't know. Like, I don't believe I saw any Democrats at that last event at the White House dinner on Saturday.
The donors and the good people that live in your district, it's a lot easier just to depend on those little fundraisers and hang around with the lobbyists and the people in Washington that you're seeing every single week than it is to go back home and say, hey, you guys, I got to get reelected. Can you support my campaign? I'd appreciate pitching in $50 or $100, or if you're capable, a max donation would be great. You know, I've got to get reelected to keep representing you. And so that's how they some of the ones that have good intentions, that's how they fall into it. But Tucker, there's a whole other side. There are Republican members of Congress that never had good intentions, ever.
Yeah.
Ever. And they came into the House of Representatives already completely supported and propped up and funded by this nasty entanglement I'm talking about in Washington. And I watched it with my own eyes when I watched Mike Lawler.
All you do is click the button, boom, it's going to generate a chord progression. Let's listen to some of these.
Get elected.
Cost of living is already making it hard to live here, and it's not getting any better. Unfortunately, it's likely to get worse. And so Mike Lawler is and Don Bacon is another name you mentioned a minute ago, but is kind of a metaphor for the corruption in the system, it would seem to me. So Mike Lawler obviously is way out there on pointless wars, neocon politics, loyalty to Israel, almost to a cartoonish point.
Yeah.
There we go. So it looks like now they're getting to the good stuff, right? Now they're getting to the meat of the stuff, which is the war. We want to hear about that, not about EVs.
But he's also leading the charge on every other anti-human initiative that comes out of the United States Congress. Anything that's bad for the public, he's for. Anything that might help the public, he ignores. Like, what is that? What is his motive? Do you understand?
I'll go back to when he was a candidate for Congress. I was already serving in the House. And in our conference meetings, in our GOP conference meetings, the ones that we have at the Capitol Hill, we have two different type of conference meetings. Each week, there's one meeting a week. And it's kind of sad that your Republican representatives only meet one time a week, but once a week. And one is either...
Whoa. So they only meet one time a week? I think we're suckers, eh? Like, because they work, so they meet one time a week, and then they're getting paid $170K. But I guess they're doing a lot of work outside of when they're meeting. So that's good, actually. I would hope that they're not just always meeting and debating with each other, and that's the job. I would hope that there's actually real work being done behind the scenes. So I think that's what's happening here. It's not that they're not working, it's that they don't have time to argue inside of a room. So that makes sense.
Political, and that one happens inside the Capitol. And then there's another kind that's completely and totally campaign and fundraising related. That one happens off campus at the Capitol Hill Club. And they bring in candidates. They'll bring in, any new candidate running for Congress that, of course, is only approved by the NRCC and approved by the traditional establishment Republican Party in Washington. So they will bring in these candidates into this GOP meeting. They'll have them stand up, raise their hand, introduce themselves. The speaker or the leader, whoever is talking, will praise them and explain to everyone in the room why they've got to write them a max check immediately and help get them elected because they're fighting to become part of the team. So I remember specifically when Mike Lawler came in, and he was welcomed in by everybody. I mean, he was propped up as the guy we have to fight for, one of the most critical races as an incoming Republican candidate, because it was a very close district. And it was so important. We were told it was so important to win this district. Well, I learned a lot about him very quickly. He, as a Catholic, Mike Lawler is a Catholic, was heavily supported and funded by the Jewish community there, and was heavily being supported.
You know who I want to hear about? Not this Lila guy, but what about DJT? Like, I wonder, what is his relationship with that country in the Middle East that shall not be named? That's what I want to hear about. Why are they talking about other people with relationships with those guys, but not DJT, the guy that is literally going to take in the whole America to war on their behalf? That's what I want to know, is what they have on Trump.
Supported by all the Christian Zionists. And he instantly had more support from pretty much every fundraising mechanism that there is in Washington, D.C. that supports Republicans. He had more help than I could have ever dreamed of having ever in my entire political career. And I was like, wow, what is going on with this guy? And it turns out he did win his race. It was a narrow victory, but he did win it. And of course, he instantly came into the House of Representatives completely bought and paid for by all of the establishment donor class that had supported him. He hated Donald Trump, made fun of him constantly, mimicked him, making fun of his voice. He used to attack me, make fun of me, come and find me on the House floor and make fun of me for supporting Donald Trump. And this was...
So like these people, they're like almost in high school. Sounds like they're in high school making fun of each other, but they just get paid a lot to be in high school and bully each other and tease each other. They do the same thing as well, like in the UK, in Canada as well, in their parliament. It's always like just who can say the smartest thing to each other, to the other person. And then they're like, yeah, score. I got him. On our dime.
This was in the 4 years before Trump got elected as president again in 2024. And I was just like, this guy's like literally one of the worst. Well, I would say he's the worst, but Randy Fine is really the worst. But Michael.
The way you see an idea in your mind. The way you describe it.
Lawler was unbelievably, I thought he was a Democrat. I was like, he's literally a Democrat. He's so against all the things that Republican voters care about. And he clearly hates Donald Trump. Well, I saw this unbelievable change in him. And of course, it happened after Trump won his primary in 2024. All of a sudden, Mike Lawler, I started joking. I started calling him MAGA Mike Lawler, because he was all of a sudden like becoming Trump's biggest supporter. And he was all excited. He got a MAGA hat signed by Donald Trump, came straight up to me to show it to me. And I'll never forget the day that he had gone and met.
Yeah, I gotta pause it to just say this. Like, honestly, like MTG or not, I got major respect for her. Not like she cares about my respect, but just the fact that she was able to stand on the whole Epstein list and she walked away from that administration. We all know how much she cared and supported Trump. The fact that she was able to put her morals and principles ahead of that and step away from Congress, despite all the bullying from Trump towards her. Like, I must applaud her. Just wanted to stop and give her flowers.
With the president at the White House, of course, I was not invited. Only this new, all the Republicans that hated the president before. Let me tell you, Tucker, it all changed. When Trump went in the White House, literally in a matter of months, those of us that fought for him when no one else would, who were basically like the inner circle.
Yep.
We all of a sudden got kicked out.
Yep, we saw that as well. He did the same thing with Alex Jones. Yeah.
It was the Republicans like Mike Lawler and all these other guys that were the ones being constantly ushered into the White House for meetings and all kinds of things. So he came back on the House floor one day and he had one of Trump's gigantic challenge coins that's like big and gold and obnoxious and heavy. And he came up and he was like, I've got one of these, Marjorie. Do you have one of these? And he was all bragging about it. But you know what that told me, Tucker, is what I really, reflecting on it now, that I didn't really realize at that time, was that the president not only was Mike Lawler fully bought and paid for by this, and Don Bacon and all these other guys, fully bought and paid for by the political industrial complex that maintains the power structure in Washington.
Okay, I mean, so like this is nothing new. I don't think she's telling us anything new here, right? I think most of you guys watching this already know that most of these people are bought and paid for. But what I really want to hear is the Iran. So I'm going to try and see if I can move this forward a little bit to get to some parts where they're talking about something to do with Iran, because that's what I want to hear about. When are you talking about
people that you're wanting to vote for you, and you should be able to show up in person and control Washington, literally fully control Washington, D.C. I wouldn't take any of their money. I voted to defund American tax dollars going to Israel. I voted to release the Epstein files, which is linked to Israel. And so, yeah, you have a hard time existing or fighting for your political career if you aren't part of that.
As a gun owner, you know the dilemma. You want to be prepared for break-ins, or what do you? So my understanding of Trump, and I talked to him a lot, as you have, was that, you know, Trump supported Israel in the same sense that I always supported Israel. You always support Israel. Like, yeah, Israel, it's great. You know, I'm not against Israel. It's not the thing I think about all day. I'm not Josh Hammer or anything, but
yeah, you know, like, just because you don't want to go and like fight a war for them doesn't mean that you dislike them. Doesn't mean that you're like anti them. Or you just don't want to go and die for them. And because like, what is the benefit for you, right? And saying that doesn't make you like against them. But it seems like that is what happens when you say something like this, and it turns out that, oh, you're against them. But no, you just don't think that we should be sending people over there to die on their behalf. That's all.
Like, I'm not against it. And Trump seemed to have a kind of, I don't know, sensible view of Israel. And then at a certain point in the last year and a half, everything became about Israel. And that was the measure that Trump and his political team used to decide who was an ally and who's an enemy. When did that change? Am I imagining this? I mean, that's my perception of it anyway. Tell me yours.
I agree with you. It did change. And just to be clear, we're talking about the secular government of Israel and
I'm talking about the government of Israel, exactly.
And the donors that fully fund it. Not only fund anything that supports the secular government of Israel, but they also do anything that funds the IDF and the wars that they fight. So to be clear, that's what we're talking about. Of course, we're not talking about Jewish people. This isn't about anti-Semitism, but he did change over time. And
you're still in my head. So now all we have to do is go to automate. Let's hit convert and see the.
I'll be really clear. This is something that is my own conclusion. To become president of the United States, there's deals that have to be made. Otherwise, you aren't allowed to have that power. And you can go president by president throughout time, and especially throughout our lifetimes. And you can look at every single president and look at their career.
Okay, so that is wonderful that she's saying that, but what does that mean for the people then? What does that mean for her? Like, is she a Democrat? Is she a Republican? Because if she's saying that it doesn't matter where they, like, what side they're on, that it just seems like they have already been bought and paid for and pretty much puppets, then what does that mean? What is the point of it all?
The decisions that they made, and you can very quickly see that they made their deal to support Israel at all times. Why does the United States of America do that for one foreign country? It makes absolutely no sense. We don't do that for any other foreign country. No other government on earth does. Every single United States president, the vast majority of members of Congress, completely pledge their allegiance. Governors too. We have to include governors and state elected officials. They pledge their complete allegiance to the government of Israel and their purpose and their protection and whatever endeavor they decide to pursue, whether it's right or wrong, whether it helps America or even if it hurts America, they still pledge their full allegiance. They make that deal. And Tucker, I don't care what anybody thinks about me, but I believe that Trump had to make a deal like this in order to become president. And that's why people see the drastic change in him. Now, he was beholden to a lot of the establishment, Washington Industries and their donors in his first administration. That happened. We can look at COVID and the response, shutting down the entire country to slow the spread of a virus was absolutely serving that gigantic machine. It wasn't for the American people. That did not help Americans. It did not help American small business.
Yeah, that's right. They pretty much decimated the whole economy. Like nothing has been the same since COVID. Decimated everything. And apparently, I don't really want to go too much in detail in COVID. So I'll reserve my opinions on that one.
Business owners, it hurt us, it hurt children's education. I mean, that's a whole nother subject, but he did that. Trump did that in his first term. However, this term, we've watched him drastically change literally from the first quarter of his presidency to being completely, basically held captive in servitude to whatever Bibi Netanyahu demands of him. That's fighting wars. That's creating policy that benefits Israel. And that is even to the point of defeating a House Republican that votes with him over 90% of the time, defeating Thomas Massey because those giant billionaire Israel donors say it has to happen. And I don't know how and why. And I don't know how you change that. And I don't know how this came to be, but I think it happened over decades. And it's a much bigger problem than people realize. It's not anti-Semitic for us to talk about it. It doesn't mean that we're against Jewish people, not at all. We love all people. We're Christians. We're commanded to love all people.
Absolutely, yeah. It should be asked, right? Because it's kind of crazy, like, and odd. Like, why that one country? Why that one nation? Really, really needs to be asked. But do you ever wonder why it took so long for this to become allowed to even be able to ask this? Because I remember not so long ago, people have been completely removed and canceled for just mentioning that name.
But our government, the United States of America, should be serving the American people and the American people's interest first and foremost at all times, 100%, and should not be easily dragged off into bombing Iran or paying to fund all types of military equipment and weapons to to perform genocide on Gaza or Christians in Lebanon and villages in Lebanon and taking their land. The hypocrisy of it is beyond, it's unspeakable. The King of England.
If you're a producer who hates AI, this plugin might change your mind. This is Reimagining Co-Producer. You can take any sample.
England, King Charles spoke to Congress this week and literally demanded that the United States of America go to war with Russia because Russia invaded Ukraine, which is absurd. Yet no one is demanding the United States stop supporting Israel, as they have literally and are at this moment doing the same thing to Lebanon. And it's not anti-Semitic to say, why is that happening? This shouldn't be happening. Why the hypocrisy? The masses about a member.
Well, so I don't know about that though, because it looks like the United States, they're supporting their allies, right? Someone might argue and say, well, they're supporting their allies. Ukraine is their ally. They're supporting Ukraine. Israel is their ally. They're supporting Israel. But I get what she's saying. She's saying that essentially what Israel are doing to their neighbors is comparable to what Russia is doing, or at least what they're alleging that Russia is doing to Ukraine. So why are they condemning Russia, but then not condemning Israel? But then the question then becomes, how do we know that what Russia is doing in Ukraine is comparable to what Israel is doing to their neighbors? Some might even argue that what Israel is doing is a lot worse. And then some might say there's nothing wrong with what Israel is doing. Really, there are people who think that there's nothing wrong with what Israel is doing and that Israel has a right to exist. And their right to exist means that this is what they have to do to exist. Yeah, and they really believe that too.
Members of Congress stood up and applauded King Charles when he demanded that. And I myself watched that and I said, well, I know for a fact, because I've been there, I know the things said in speeches to Congress publicly, because that's what that foreign leader is asking of Congress. Those same conversations happen privately at the White House. And it would be really naive for anyone to think that King Charles is not talking to Donald Trump about going to war with Russia because of the Ukraine-Russia war. And that concerns me. Yeah,
well, I don't think we have to be worried about that because we know that DJT is like best buddies with Putin. So I don't think that's going to happen. So I wouldn't worry about that. Besides, he's too busy right now blockading and truthing and tweeting.
It's just interesting that you think of donors to the Republican Party and Democratic Party, I should say, who are pretty single-mindedly focused on the fortunes of Israel, and they want foreign aid, they want a defense guarantee, they want the United States military to protect Israel as it continues its expansion in the Middle East, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all true. But that same set of donors, and this is the part that does confuse me, is also the group that forced the Biden administration to fund the Ukraine war, that has prevented this administration from ending or really even working to end the Ukraine war. This is also the very same group that has pushed open borders and has convinced the president to change his longstanding and often stated view on immigration. So he got elected in 2016 promising to build a wall, never really, didn't build a wall, didn't really try very hard.
I mean, could we say that it's possible that they've already accomplished their mission in Ukraine, whatever that might be? Because I think they've pretty much destroyed the place. And I think during the time that they've tied up Russia, I believe Syria has come into play, right? I believe Russia has lost Syria. So I think also they were able to swoop into Venezuela, take Maduro, right? Putin was too busy fighting Ukraine, right? So one might argue and say that maybe that is what the agenda was all along, was just to distract Russia, keep them tied up, and it's already mission accomplished. And so now they're okay to just toss Ukraine to the side. But then it could also be that Ukraine, they are waiting for the midterms, and then by the time the midterms come, then help is coming again, right? So I don't know, man. I don't know what to make of any of this. Y'all let me know what you think down in the comments. What are you speculating here? Because that's all we can do.
Hard to build a wall. And now is saying, well, actually, I'm not going to deport a lot of people. We're going to make them citizens.
Yep.
We're going to start the process of, immigration reform or whatever phrase they're using. But Trump is now pro-immigration, which is an amazing change. Once again, at the behest of these donors. These are the same people who have pushed open borders in Europe, who've abetted the refugee migration from Syria and Africa into Western Europe and then complained about it. Why is that? Like, why would people who support Israel also be for changing the demographic mix of the United States? That doesn't make sense. Well, it's true.
It is true, and it's happened for many years now. Our demographics have been drastically changing. That happens through our border.
Imagine being just to be honest, there, right? Like the demographics thing is not only happening in the U.S. We also see that happening in the UK, Australia, Canada, right? So it's almost like as if they're in lockstep with each other, these countries. And we really saw that in great effect during the C19, right? During the pandemic, we saw like how closely knitted they are and how well they work together in lockstep to contain us.
To build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Open border policies of administrations that refuse to enforce our laws. We have laws. People can be deported. It's just the fact that they haven't fully supported them and enforced those laws. So there's absolutely no reason, for example, for approximately 10 or 11 Republicans to vote with the Democrats to pass a bill. This happened just this month, to extend the temporary protection status of 350,000 Haitians. Now, you have to ask yourself, like, I think people that watch Fox News all day will go, oh, those typical bad old rhinos, and they'll be mad and go, why did they do that? But what really happens behind the scenes is these powerful lobbies and these powerful groups who are basically businesses that run off of government contracts, they run off of grants they receive, they run off you can call open borders an industry. It is a huge, powerful industry. It's an industry of all types of charities and nonprofits and NGOs that are everything from people that give someone that comes across the border a backpack, or say like Haitians that have to be protected here in America and are allowed to live here and work for free, even though they're not citizens, but they're protected. This is an entire industry. It's people that serve all of that in every capacity, even lawyers, American lawyers that help these people through the so-called immigration process, or really to stay in America against our laws. Now, why is that happening? I think the answer is really dark. It weakens our country. Anytime you change the demographics of a country, you drastically change.
That is true. And I'm an immigrant, and I'll tell you that firsthand, right? Because me as an immigrant, I never want any trouble, right? Very compliant guy. Don't want any problems. I'm just here to grind and live that American dream, right? But then we know like the Americanas, the ones that all they know is America, right? And those ones, they're probably a little bit more like entitled, as they should be, right? This is their land many generations back. So they're probably less compliant. So it makes sense for sure. We immigrants, like, no offense to my fellow immigrants, guys, but it's true. We are definitely very compliant because we don't want any complications with our papers or anything like that. So, yeah, just saying.
The people there, which radically changes the views of the people, because you have such a vast variety of all types of people with all types of belief systems and all types of opinions. Now, when you fill a country with millions of people that are dependent on the government because the government let them in, they weren't born here, they came across the border, and then they may have been protected like dreamers, like Obama protected the dreamers. Or
at the end of the day, like even the immigrants, like everybody is just looking for greener pastures. Everybody is just out here trying to survive. So you can't blame anybody, but this is why we have governments, is to kind of enforce your borders and make sure, because without a border, then you don't have a country, right? So while everybody is desperate and whatnot, you can't just open the floodgates, because look at what that does to your housing market. Look at what that does to your job market. And I think that is also an advantage of what they've done here, right? Because now they've been able to suppress the wages as a result of this influx, right? You have people that will work for way less and they don't even need much time off because, you know, like this is way better than what they already had back home with their tyrant leaders who rule with an iron fist. Because make no mistake about it, complain as much as you want about the United States, it's still the best place to be on earth, in my opinion. If you really want to like hustle, grind, and make some money, right? And make a name for yourself, then the US is probably where you want to be. Because it is, I think, the greatest meritocracy, at least. But feel free to disagree with me in the chat, guys.
You say the Haitians, 350,000 of them that, I couldn't believe it. Rich McCormick, another Republican member of Congress who is from my state, who I personally know, voted to protect 350,000 Haitians. It doesn't make sense. Like, why would he do that?
So I'm just going to skip ahead here. I'm going to skip ahead here to try and see what else they talk about.
Game.
Because we get the point, right? We get the point.
State. And so we need to prevent that by changing the demographic mix.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense at all. Like that just doesn't tell me what that adds up to. But it's very obvious as you watch that those are their twin priorities. Preserve Israel as an ethnostate, prevent the United States from being an ethnostate. What are we watching?
I don't know. I just looked at the list of the Republicans that voted to protect Haitians. And so it's pretty interesting to me. Fitzpatrick, Lawler, Bacon, Maria Salazar, Carlos Jimenez, Nicole Maliotakis, Rich McCormick, Mike Turner, who's not running for Congress again, Mike Carey, and Mario Diaz-Balart. There's several names on there, Salazar, Jimenez, Diaz-Balart, that fight the hardest for anyone that's come across the border. I mean, they literally want to just make them citizens. Give it to them for free. Maria Salazar
for sure
has a bill that she's trying.
They may not even take you out on a date, not even a kiss before you give it up. Yeah, that is not good.
Grandchildren's future. They may be broke and can't have a job and can't afford health insurance and can't afford to do anything in life. And AI will totally replace their future jobs. But you know what? We got to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon.
You know what else I wonder about? Like, why is it that AI is taking a lot of jobs? But then, like, what about like a job as like a political person, right? Why can't AI do that as well? Or is that not up for debate? Because AI is not emotional, right? It goes with logic. It goes with data. So don't we want to make decisions and have people that like are making decisions without any emotions or like political ideologies? I mean, that's also asking for Skynet, right? Imagine having AI like running the government. Yo, that could turn ugly really fast.
And it's been that propaganda that has not only basically wrangled in these members of Congress and other elected officials that are fully supported by that lobby and the massive donor list that comes with it. It's huge. You have no idea how big it is. Jews and Christians. It's the AIPAC umbrella, but it's much bigger than AIPAC itself. Lots of donors that, hey, will write you a check and say, you just make sure that you take care of Israel. And so they are wrapped in and beholden by that money. And it's supported by Americans who have been brainwashed to believe that that's...
What I don't understand is like what more was DJT looking for, right? Because he had a lot of funding from Elon Musk. So I don't know why he had to take their money. So I don't know. I feel like there's something else going on that we don't know. Almost like they have something on DJT. I wonder what it could be.
Exactly what America has to do. But nobody ever talks about, Tucker, nobody ever talks about the fact that Israel has nuclear weapons. Israel has hundreds of nuclear weapons. Like, who's really going to mess with Israel at the end of the day? They have nuclear weapons. It's just like, do you ever see anybody freaking out about Kim Jong-un anymore in North Korea?
No.
No, because he has nuclear weapons. So what a lie it is that we really have to support Israel.
I have for years noticed that there are people who truly love Israel. It's never bothered me. People love, I don't know, model trains or kite surfing or what. People love a lot of things. I don't feel threatened by it. You're allowed to love whatever you want, as far as I'm concerned. In the case of loving Israel, however, for American leaders, some Jewish, mostly not Jewish, it's the same principle. It seems like that love for Israel is accompanied by contempt for the United States, maybe even hatred for the United States. What is it? Maybe it's impossible to serve two masters. Maybe you always wind up hating one of them. Maybe that's a biblical principle. Maybe that's true. I really don't know the answer.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, I thank you guys for joining me for today's stream. I really appreciate that. Those of you who have already liked the video, I thank you. Subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm off camera right now because my camera is overheating. I really need to figure out what is going on with my camera, but I thank you guys all the same, and I'm going to call it a night. Until next time, peace.